It's the 31st of October in Pierre, South Dakota. Inside a state-run data center, rows of high-density server racks hum with a persistent vibration in the climate-controlled chill. This is the heart of the South Dakota Bureau of Information and Telecommunications. The facility is built for total connectivity, high redundancy, and state-of-the-art digital governance. But on this morning, the state's digital footprint begins to vanish into a systemic collapse of digital services. A 404 error appears on the main government portal, the primary window for every state service. Then the Department of Motor Vehicles goes dark, followed by the state's licensing and taxation platforms. Within hours, the outage spreads to every corner of the state's high-security government network. It becomes a two-day IT outage that paralyzes the daily functions of the entire state government. No one can process a building permit, check a criminal record, or access a vital state database. Officials in Pierre officially call it a systemic collapse of digital services in their initial damage reports. Security experts immediately scan the firewalls and encryption layers for signs of a sophisticated cyber attack. They look for traces of professional hackers or foreign state actors who might have bypassed the state security. But the failure isn't buried in a million lines of malicious code or a zero-day exploit. Deep inside the humming server racks, a maintenance technician finds the single point of failure. It isn't a digital virus. It is a mundane physical artifact found in the cabling. A small rectangular adhesive label attached to a cluster of blue Ethernet cables has begun to peel. The official state report will later blame mislabeled wires for the entirety of the 48-hour shutdown. 48 hours of total digital blackout caused by a single piece of incorrectly placed tape. Take a look at how it unfolded. This isn't an isolated incident in the autumn of 2025. It is part of a pattern of crumbling infrastructure. Across the country, the invisible threads that hold public life together are beginning to snap. On September 5th, in the San Francisco Bay Area, the core of the region's transit shuts down. BART trains grind to a halt during the morning rush, leaving thousands of commuters stranded on subterranean platforms. Commuters and local news outlets call it a morning commute meltdown as the system fails to reboot. Thousands of people stand on crowded metropolitan transit hubs, staring at blank digital departure boards. On October 22nd, a ripple effect from an Amazon Web Services outage hits residents in New York State. Suddenly, residents find themselves impacted by the failure of their centralized cloud computing infrastructure. Basic digital tools and household services, usually taken for granted, simply stop responding for the day. Then there is Waterbury, Connecticut, where the failure moves from the digital to the physical world. A 6-day water system outage leaves thousands of taps dry and municipal pressure tanks empty. Residents look at a municipal water bill for a household that shows 6 straight days of zero pressure. The city is forced to plan emergency repairs just to restore the flow to a basic kitchen faucet. In South Dakota, the Bureau of Information and Telecommunications is watching these regional failures closely. When their own state government data centers go dark, the assumption isn't human error. The scale of the systemic collapse suggests something much more calculated and high stakes. Officials look at the server racks in Pierre and see a high-value target for international sabotage. In the high-stakes world of digital governance, the most logical explanation is a sophisticated breach. They imagine a state-sponsored group, a firewall bypass, or a coordinated digital siege on U.S. infrastructure. The physical asset management in these high-security rooms is supposed to be mathematically foolproof. Every cable is logged, every port is mapped, and every redundant path is verified by secondary systems. Or at least, that is what the official procurement and maintenance documents claim. The search for a digital ghost leads the investigative team back to the physical data center floor. A technician walks through the cooling fans of the Pierre facility, carrying a high-powered handheld flashlight. Every server rack is a monument to high redundancy, cooling efficiency, and state-of-the-art engineering. But the expensive diagnostic tools aren't finding a software bug or a corrupted database entry. The technician stops at a dense, tangled nest of blue Ethernet cables in the back of a primary rack. He reaches into the cluster and pulls a single wire from its high-speed data port. On the cable is a small, rectangular strip of adhesive tape that is slowly losing its stickiness. It is a physical label meant to guide the physical asset management of the state's wiring. The text on the sticker identifies the cable as part of a secondary, non-critical backup system. But the port it is plugged into is the primary gateway for the state's entire digital network. He looks at the next wire in the rack and the one after that. It is the same story. The text on the stickers contradicts the physical reality of the connection. The wrong wires have been feeding data into the wrong ports for 48 hours of total blackout. The official report later clarifies the cause: mislabeled wiring during routine maintenance in the server room. The state government systems didn't fail because of a logic error or a sophisticated foreign exploit. The multi-million-dollar infrastructure simply didn't know where it was physically plugged in. It was a systemic collapse of digital services, triggered by a manual filing and labeling mistake. The state's digital existence was held together by a piece of tape that lied to the person holding it. 48 hours of total government paralysis, traced back to a single misapplied sticker. South Dakota state officials are eventually forced to go on the record and explain the blackout. They characterize the event as a 2-day IT outage triggered by a simple human error in wiring. It is an embarrassing admission for a bureau that prides itself on high-end digital security. But while South Dakota restarts its servers, the sense of systemic fragility continues to spread elsewhere. In Waterbury, Connecticut, the 6-day water system outage has only just concluded with a final repair. Local officials are still scrambling to organize further emergency repairs to prevent a second dryout. Residents in New York are still reporting how they were impacted by the massive AWS failure. It was a systemic collapse of digital services that felt like a permanent shift in reliability. In San Francisco, the morning commute meltdown creates a different kind of political pressure. The Board of Supervisors decides they have seen enough of private infrastructure management failures. On January 7, 2026, they move to acquire PG&E assets in an attempt to seize control. They want to fold the utility into a new public power system managed by the city itself. Billions of dollars in assets are being moved on the premise that private companies can no longer be trusted. It is a massive structural pivot triggered by a single company's inability to keep the lights on. Back in Pierre, the physical asset management protocol is quietly updated with new oversight. The state government systems are back online, but the optics of the bureau have been permanently damaged. The public now knows that the most secure data center in the state is vulnerable to a peeling sticker, and that 48 hours of a government can be erased by a single wrong wire and a bad label. Today, the South Dakota government portal and DMV services are back online for the public. The 2-day IT outage has been archived as a resolved ticket in the files at Pierre. In San Francisco, the Board of Supervisors continues its push to acquire PG&E assets for $1 billion. They are moving to establish a public power system as a shield against future infrastructure failure. It is a massive structural gamble on the reliability of state and bureaucratic oversight. But back in the South Dakota data center, the fix wasn't a billion-dollar policy shift or a new law. It was a single technician remapping a handful of mislabeled wires and clearing the ports. The physical asset management protocol is updated, but the tools of the trade remain analog. Inside a high-density rack, a fresh label is pressed onto a bright yellow Ethernet cable. It is a simple strip of adhesive tape with handwritten text identifying its primary function. In the constant dry heat of the server room, the glue on the new tape is already starting to cure. It is already starting to slowly peel away from the plastic casing of the wire. The state's digital existence is restored, and the 404 errors have disappeared from the screen. For now, the green link lights on the server rack stay steady and bright. The system is back, held together by a sticker that hasn't fallen off the wire just yet.